6:37. The Abbey of the Genesee has been baking monk's bread since 1953, and they continue that same recipe today. Chris Lopez live this morning exploring their process. Good morning, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Abby. You may be eating this right now. You may have seen this in store. I'm holding the raisin cinnamon variety of the monk's bread. But how is it actually made? How does that goodness make it to your table? How does it taste so delicious all the time? Well, we are going to find out this morning, starting here. I'm with Andrew this morning, and he's the manager here at the Monk's Bread. Good morning.
Good morning.
So first off, let's start. How many loaves do you guys bake every single day, or does it vary?
We bake we bake twice a week, which is about 4,000 loaves a day. So it's about 10,000 loaves a week it averages out to.
Ooh, okay, and this is pretty much where it all starts at,
yes.
Right? What is this machine right here? That's Roy, by the way. He's kind of working on this first machine. What is he going to start to do?
He is starting what we call the mix. So this is just basically a big mixer. We mix roughly about 1,000 pounds of ingredients at a time.
Did you say 8,000?
1,000. 1,000.
Okay.
Pounds of ingredients at a time to get about 1,000 loaf batch.
Wow.
So right now he's just dumping in the dry ingredients, calling for the flour and the water for this batch.
Sorry to interrupt, but guys, I can smell the cinnamon right now. You guys can't smell that at all. But right now, you can start to smell that cinnamon. We are making the raisin cinnamon variety. And how long does this process take that Roy's doing?
The mix takes about 15 minutes. Part of the time is just the mixer running. And as you can see, the flour's going in now. So it takes about 15 minutes for this process to complete, and then we move it over to the makeup room.
And I'm gonna go over to Roy right now. Hey, good morning, Roy. When you do this process here, are you looking for anything specific?
Waiting for the flour to get finished up, and then for the water to be at the limit where I can go and start the mixer and get the batch up and running.
There we go.
Start mixing.
Short and simple, but this is where it all starts out. We will be here all morning, going through the process step by step, figuring out how this bread gets so good every single time. They've been doing it since 1953. The recipe has stayed the same, and it makes it onto the shelves and onto your dinner table for delicious goodness. Abby, I'm going to send it back to you in studio.
Chris, we're excited to learn more about the process. It is super interesting, and again, one of those times I wish smell-o-vision was an actual thing, because that cinnamon sounds delicious. All right, Chris, we'll check back in with you soon. Thanks. All right, if you've been to the grocery store and you've heard of monk's bread, you may know it's so delicious you don't even have to put anything on it. The recipe has stayed the same since 1953. Chris Lopez is live this morning at the Abbey of the Genesee, learning how their bread makes it to the shelves. Chris, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Abby. So in between each takes, they rolled out about 1,000 pounds of dough of this raisin cinnamon right now. So we're in the very next steps of making this sweet goodness. I'm with Andrew this morning, and for those that are watching, what's this next process looking like? This is looking like a very organized construction right here.
Yes, so we're in what we call the makeup room. So basically, after the dough gets mixed, we put it into a machine called the divider. So basically, the dough gets pushed into the machine by gravity, by hand as well. It gets cut into chunks. The chunks then get sent into a machine called the rounder. Basically makes the dough into a ball. The rounder then feeds it onto a conveyor belt into what we call the overhead proofer. Basically, this starts the proofing process or the raising process for the bread. And then after the overhead proofer, it goes over into the machine over here called the molder. Basically, the molder takes the dough ball and makes it into a pancake almost after in the first part. After it comes through the first part, that gets rolled up into a canister. for lack of a better description. And then gets rolled through press plates to sort of flatten it out a little bit, get it to the right height, and then load it into the pans. The pans then go onto the rack. Once we get a full rack, it'll go into the proof box where it finishes proofing and raising.
And for those that don't know, we walked in there. It was pretty hot and moist in that proof box.
Yeah.
What's that temp in there?
Temperature, it's about 100 degrees and about 80% humidity. So it's basically tropical in there. So
pretty much not too much different from being outside right now.
Right now, yes. In the winter, it feels wonderful, but right now, it's not too much different.
Abby, we're going to continue on this trajectory to make this raisin cinnamon, and I'm going to bring back smell-o-vision for you guys. Yes, it absolutely smells like wonderful raisin cinnamon in this factory right now. It's pretty awesome to see all of this work go into bringing one of these onto the shelf and then onto your dinner table. But when you may actually be eating this right now, and I congratulate you. Abby, I'm going to send it back to you in studio. We'll be here all morning throughout Fox.
We're not eating any, Chris. Gosh, you're making us hungry here in the studio. We'll check back in with you in just a little bit. You've probably heard of Monk's bread. It comes in a lot of different varieties: maple cinnamon, cranberry, even sunflower, just to name a couple, and people have been enjoying it for decades. Chris Lopez is live this morning at the Abbey of the Genesee, learning all about how they make their bread in the Rochester area. Good morning, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Abby. So earlier this morning, starting out making this, and we were over in another room, and essentially it started out mixing. They were mixing about 1,000 pounds of dough. They take that dough and they bring it over in kind of like a crate, and they raise it up in pouring that dough into this process here. And that is where we find ourselves here with Andrew this morning. And when that gets poured from there into this machine, what exactly is going on?
So basically the dough gets pulled down by gravity and into the machine. And in the machine there's plates that basically takes the dough in chunks.
All right, looks like we're running into some technical difficulties with Chris Lopez out there. Learning more about the making of Monk's bread, we are going to try to reconnect his camera and see if we can learn more about that bread making process. Time right now is 7:33. Stick around. Marty has weather first after the break, coming up next. All right, we're going to try to check back in with Chris Lopez. Monk's bread comes in a lot of different varieties, like we've been talking about. Maple cinnamon, cranberry. It seems like the options are endless. Chris Lopez, live this morning. Fingers crossed that we have it up and running. Chris, we're so eager to learn more about it, so let's get right into it.
Hey, good morning, Abby. So earlier, we are making some of this, but a little earlier, they were mixing the bread. If you're just tuning in right now, they mix all that dough together in a large machine. It's 1,000 pounds of it. Then they bring it over into this area, kind of like a crate, and then they start to pour it into that machine over there. Then after that, they start to do what's called the proofing process, and I want to get into that right now. I'm with Andrew of the bakery, and can you show us what's going on in here, please?
Yep. So this is the proof box. It's basically kept at 100 degrees, 80% humidity to keep the bread rising at a consistent rate. So you can see we want it to get about the height of the pan, just so that the top of the sort of arc of the bread is right at the top of the pan, almost as if you laid a sheet of paper across it. That sheet of paper would just barely touch the top of the bread.
What's the temperature in there?
100 degrees.
And then is there like a certain humidity that you guys are trying to keep it at? Or
About 80%.
And you guys are very meticulous in how you guys make this. This has been an ingredients and a recipe that's been followed for decades. And you are holding a piece of dough right now.
Yeah.
And you're looking for something in particular.
So basically what we do is most of the time with most of our doughs is we perform sort of what we call the window pane test. It's basically where you try to stretch the dough out as thin as possible. I've been trying to do it with this dough for a little bit here, so it's...
You worked it in a little bit.
Yeah, it's losing some of its stretch that it had. Basically, the idea of the test is that you can get it thin enough that you can see through it, and it has almost like a membrane quality from the gluten structures. And that tells us our dough is strong enough to withstand the process, as well as, you know, it's not too weak and won't rip apart during that process. Or on the opposite side, it's not too strong and it won't properly form when we need it to form.
Almost like an opaque feature. And if you guys are I'm gonna go into here, I'm gonna speak with Roy. And Roy, this morning, we're in this pretty meticulous process here. What are you doing right now?
I am throwing the dough balls that we made up from the end of the batch and putting them through here so they can go down to the molder and get put into the pan.
And how long does this process, particularly, we were here earlier and you guys kind of had a structure going on, still kind of going on right now. How long does this process take from when it pours the dough all the way into that vat there with that moisture?
Probably about 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. And what's going on when you guys pour? For the people that didn't see us earlier this morning, can you walk them through, I know it's not going on right now, but can you walk them through that process of when that dough dropped into there, moved its way all the way around to over there, please?
Yeah. So the dough will come down from our dough trail. It'll go into the divider and press it up into 4 separate pieces. And it'll trail it down through here to the rounder. And it'll round the dough ball off for us. And then it goes to this, which is the overhead proofer. It'll be in here for about 3 minutes or so, is how long it takes. And then it'll go over to the molder. And once it's at the molder, it goes down and gets dropped into the pans. And from the pans, it'll go onto our bread racks. And from the bread racks, once they're full, they will go into our proof box where they'll sit for roughly about an hour or so until they're ready to come out.
And I want to point out, you've been a long-time employee here, and I do want to point out, this recipe has not changed. You've been here 14 years and pretty much no change in the recipe.
No changes at all whatsoever.
Wow, that's amazing. And we're going to be here also showing you guys the finished product in our 8:30 hit of this raisin cinnamon bread. Stick with us all morning. Next hit, I'll be in the gift shop. They do more than make bread here. Abby, back to you in studio.
All right, Chris Lopez, a lot of fun out there. Thanks so much. 7:53, weather, traffic, and headlines are next. Welcome back. The Abbey of the Genesee is famous for its bread, but they also sell a lot of other items that are just as delicious. Our Chris Lopez has been live there all morning. He's coming to us now from the gift shop. Chris, it looks like those shelves are empty. I'm assuming because people are just buying up all their stuff.
You assumed right, Abby. The bread is the main source here. That's what they're known for, but they also have a lot of other stuff. I'm with Father Isaac this morning, and first of all, your gift shop has evolved quite a bit. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but what are some of the other items that you guys offer to people?
We have a number of products from other monasteries. We make a biscotti, some cheese crisps, a monk's fruit and nut bar here on site, and we also feature some products from other monasteries in the U.S.
That's pretty cool that you guys collaborate with the other monasteries. Is that brand new, or did you guys kind of bring that in a little bit long time ago?
I think that most of our monasteries carry products from one another's houses, so there's some cooperation there.
And you have a baby in here. the biscotti. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what is that, and exactly why is it your baby?
Well, I helped in designing the product, and it was a lot of fun experimenting with different recipes, reading around, perfecting the flavors and so on, trying them out, different people trying the flavors, seeing which ones were most attractive. And they're a hit. They sell very well in our online store, monksbread.com. That's the main place here at our on-site store, but also on our website. They're available and they do well.
Did you ever think when you first became a monk, did you ever think that you would also make the biscotti as well?
No, you have no idea what you're getting into. You make final vows as a monk and you're signing a blank check, so it makes things interesting.
And right now, this gift store is absolutely beautiful. Woodwork everywhere. Everything is meticulously placed. But it wasn't exactly like that even just a few years ago, correct?
Right. Most of the time that I've been here, it was just quite a small room. There was a slot in the wall you could drop your money through and take your bread. But we had more and more people coming through, and we needed to come up with a larger space.
And when was this kind of created?
It was finished and opened to the public in 2019.
Right, just in time for COVID, just like you said.
Well, we had one full year where the business was booming and many people were coming, and then we were down for a year, however long, with the lockdown.
And you guys are known for the bread, but you guys are the Abbey of the Genesee. And can you explain that mission for people, please?
Sure. So basically, the monastery is devoted to the contemplative life. So a focus on the interior life of meditation and prayer. We celebrate the liturgy publicly, and that's open to the public, so people can come into the chapel and experience the chant. And basically, it's a place of silence and peace and healing that's open to anyone seeking to deepen their spiritual life.
And how long have you been in this life?
I've been here 25 years.
And what's it been like over that, almost essentially quarter century?
It's been very rewarding, very beautiful. It's a beautiful life. I think the contemplative monastic life is the best kept secret in the church.
And I love that you guys have littered a ton of photos all across the wall of the baking that goes on here. Can you kind of explain the significance of some of these photos here?
Sure. I mean, the bakery started 75 years ago. And one of the monks used to bake when he was on the ship in the Navy. And he had a recipe that was particularly good. And then when he came here, the monks were very austere and they weren't allowed to put any spread, like any butter, on their bread. So he had to come up with a bread that tasted so good you didn't need to add butter. And that was the first monk's loaf. And he started selling that to people that were helping to construct the buildings and local workers and retreatants. And it just took off. Before long, they were selling it at church parishes on the weekend, and it grew explosively at the outset.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us, Father. I'm going to walk over here, and I do want to point one thing out, kind of unique. Normally, when you walk to a grocery store, you see all of the sliced bread, but you don't want to, if you want to kind of decide your size of bread when you hop out, they do have the unsliced bread here, and you can decide how much goodness you take out of this bag. We're going to be finishing up back in the bakery to show you the finished product, at least it heating up, and how we get from the bakery that dough into this bag. Abby, I'm going to send it back to you in studio.
All right, Chris Lopez out there. Thanks so much, buddy. We appreciate it. 8:17 coming up next. Tips to gamers to make sure they're protecting their hearing. We're back after this. Monk's Bread has carried on the same great recipe since 1953. The bread comes in all different varieties, and they're made with great care. Chris Lopez has been at the Abbey of the Genesee all morning long, learning about their process step by step. Chris, what are we up to now?
So right now, we're going to start baking the bread, but for those who maybe are tuning in right now, earlier they essentially had a big machine that mixed all the ingredients. It makes 1,000 pounds of dough, and it will eventually be made into this raisin cinnamon. Now, it also goes through another meticulous process on a machine, but right now, it's essentially going to be baking. I'm here with Andrew this morning, and what's going on? What are kind of the technicalities that are going on right now?
So right now they're loading the oven. Again, this is one of the more manual parts of the operation. So literally you take it off the oven rack, you load it up, 13 pans per tray. So there's a series of 20 large trays in the oven. So when the arm pushes it forward onto the tray, that tray starts a rotation. For raisin bread, it's roughly 20-25 minutes in the oven at about 380 to 385. So, and then after that process happens, the bread is baked, and it will come out the oven to go over to the decanter, and then on into our packaging side of the operation.
And Roy's going to take us through that in a little bit, but I do want to know how many loaves of bread are going through this every single day, would you say, roughly?
Roughly it is about 4,000 to 5,000.
Wow, all day, 8 to 10 hours a day, I believe you guys work?
Yes, yeah, well, for our production runs, we run about 4 to 5 batches per bake day. So it's a little bit less than 10 hours because we do cleaning as we go as well. So there's time built in for cleaning and stuff as well. But 4,000 to 5,000 loaves in a little bit under 10 hours.
And I'm holding some raisin a loaf right now. And I'm going to go over to Roy. Now, Roy, we're actually baking the bread right now.
Yeah.
But you know, this is live television, so we got to time this out. But when does this start to move, and can you take us through that process step by step down this line?
Yeah, that's going to be going forward in about 5 seconds. So that tray will come up, it'll get level with this platform here. This bar right here will come forward and push the pans onto the tray just like it is now. And then from there, it's roughly about 22 to 25 minutes to make a full rotation around before it comes back out onto here where it goes down and gets decanned.
Can you take us down the line almost as if this were to actually happen for us in live time?
Yeah, so once it comes out from the oven, it'll go down through this conveyor. From there, it comes up. These are like our air lifters for the bread. It loosens the bread up from the pans. And then we've got a suction cup decanter. So the bread comes down through those cups. We'll suck the loaves out of the pan. We'll bring them up over to here. And as it does that, the pans go down to the discharge conveyor. The bread continues down through here. Once it's out of here, it goes on to our cooling tower, which is this big circle conveyor over here. And it'll roughly stay on here for about 55 minutes to an hour until it comes off. And then it'll make its way from the backside down and around and come up to the slicers.
That's going to work its way through here, and I know this is pretty much packaging in this area.
Yeah, so once it comes through our slicer, it'll go through the bagger. Once it makes its way through the bagger, it'll go through the tagger. From there, it comes down to the conveyor where it goes through our metal detector to make sure the product is safe and there's nothing in it.
And it pretty much, like for a lack of better words, packaging.
Yeah, and then it comes down through, and we've got our packers down here. They put it in the trays, and out the door it goes.
There we go. Expedited process of making the Monk's bread. I wish you guys could have saw that live, but you know, this is the real product right here. monksbread.com. All of this variety tastes amazing. Abby, I'm going to send it back to you in studio.
Such a cool process right in our backyard. Ms. Lopez, thanks so much for all of the information. A really entertaining story this morning. It's 8:36. Marty has weather first after the break next.